After a hefty 10-month absence, Dream Quest. Every Sega Dreamcast game ever released in release order returns with Vol.7 and some beautiful 4K captures directly from a real Dreamcast console. A pretty cool selection of games in this episode, featuring a number of Dreamcast big hitters, including one particularly legendary or infamous, some might say, title to round out the show and lead us quite nicely into Christmas. Yes, sirree Bob, I'm feeling a bit festive. There are also a handful of brand spanking new English translations in this episode, so that's always fun. So set controls for the heart of the sun and please join me in a sacred quest into the wonderful world of Dreamcast!
これ
昨日今日となぜか引っ越しラッシュでね。
ここに住んでる人？
いや、僕は地下の喫茶店でバイトしてるんだ。ついでに管理人の手伝いも。
あ、私8号室に引っ越してきた角田直です。よろしく。
よろしく。高村哲。あ、後で管理人の前田さんのとこに顔出してくれる？喫茶店のマスターもやってる人だからすぐわかるよ。
うん。
Birdcage of Horrors is a horror film produced and published by Sega. It was released between September and July of 1999, taking the form of 6 multimedia GD-ROM discs. The film was available exclusively through the Dreamcast Direct online service and was uniquely presented in 365 one-minute episodes across each of the 6 discs. Each episode became accessible gradually over a year, from October 1st, 1999 to October 1st, 2000. Kind of contradicting what they said in the first paragraph there, but never mind. Originally, viewers had to connect their Dreamcast to the internet daily and download special save files to their VMUs to unlock new episodes. Additionally, each entry of Birdcage of Horrors was only available to those who completed the previous chapters. Curious. Shortly after the final episode was released, the servers went offline until now. To watch the entire film, one was required to use a special VMU save file or extract the videos from the disk image itself for external playback. No longer. Love these translation guys. What they're doing is really awesome. And this film is pretty cool. I've always had a bit of a thing for FMV games. I mean, this is just a film, basically, not really a game, but there's just something a bit uncanny about seeing real faces on your console games. I think I'm probably showing my age a bit there, really. It was amazing when you were used to looking at pretty crude sprites in the 16-bit era, at least. That's not to say that I think they're particularly good, generally speaking, but I just like them. This one has decent production values for the time, I would say, although it definitely looks more TV than film to me. They could have put it in 24 frames per second and it probably would have looked a bit more cinematic, and expensive. But hey, I like it all the same. I won't ruin the plot for you. I will only say that this is a very unique experience and I recommend that you give this one a try if you have the means. Of course, it is all in English now, and so you can enjoy it in its entirety.
だから人間金持ちなんかなるもんじゃない。上等だぜ。
Death Crimson 2 is a light gun video game published by Ecole, released on November 25th, 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast. It's a light gun game and a sequel to Death Crimson. Perhaps the most intriguing part about this sequel was the inclusion of a full story mode with almost Resident Evil-esque free-roaming sections where you explore in a third-person perspective outside the light gun gameplay, while an improved, inverted commas, version of Death Crimson 2 called Death Crimson OX did receive a Western release, in the USA at least. It completely dropped these story sections, meaning non-Japanese speakers never got a chance to experience the weird mishmash of gameplay in the English language. Until now, because this Japanese version has been translated into English, and so we get to have a go ourselves. How is it? It's fucking strange, to be honest, but it's certainly interesting. Yeah, I was surprised by how in-depth these dialogue scenes here are, and they're very, very odd. I'm not sure exactly what vibe they're going for exactly, but I will admit that I found them weirdly absorbing. How about the game itself? Well, it gets 49 based on 7 reviews, and it's a bit drab, to be honest. You shoot stuff, that works okay. It's more the environments and the enemies and the overall art design for me that I find it pretty unappealing. I'll take Virtua Cop or Confidential Mission over this any day, and if I did want a horror light gun game, then I'm pretty well catered to already, obviously, by House of the Dead 2. Don't get me wrong though, I really appreciate the fact that people have gone to the trouble to translate this thing, and I did have a fair amount of fun playing through it. Mahjong Shangri-La is a mahjong table game originally for the Sega Naomi arcade platform. It was ported to the Sega Dreamcast. This game is on a mission to make mahjong sexy. Sexy polygon lady, put your pointy bits in my face. Your cold dead eyes drive me crazy. Wish we were of the same race. What am I doing with my life? Nice graphics. I'll give it that. 49 based on 4 reviews. It's mahjong. I can't comment on it because I'm an ignorant Westerner and I can only play drafts. And guess who? Napachi, travelling to Las Vegas with 10 consecutive shots. It's a pachinko simulator. Pachinko is of course a game where small steel balls must be caught in order to win prizes. I've got steel balls too, but they're certainly not little, they're minute. Enjoy all the thrills and chills of pachinko in the comfort of your own home, free from the threat of winning any prizes. But wait, you were in fact able to win prizes via the Dreamcast online servers.
Oh shit.
But of course now you can't because the servers were closed down donkeys years ago.
Oh.
I don't understand this game. It's weirdly satisfying though. Seem to be having some joy there. Eh. Hello Kitty's Lovely Fruit Park is a puzzle game for the Sega Dreamcast based on the Hello Kitty franchise. It is an adaptation of the game Colony, developed by Midnight Synergy. This gets a Sega Retro score of 55, but I quite enjoyed it actually. It's pretty fun, no idea what they're saying to each other, but the game itself, you can figure it out. Get more strawberries on screen than your opponent's lemons. You can hop just a couple of spaces with your strawberry. If you hop by just one space, then you can keep a strawberry on the existing space and multiply your strawberries. Does that make sense? But if you hop 2 squares, you can of course hop over a lemon and turn more of the opponent's lemons into strawberries usually, but you don't get to keep your existing strawberry, unfortunately. Yeah, it's fun. It's genuinely quite fun. Me and my little girl played this one for quite a while. She likes Hello Kitty. Of course, it's a fun puzzle game though. I did actually find myself getting quite absorbed by this one. A veritable fruit and veg shop full of fun for you here, folks. Just ask my 5-year-old. Virtua Striker 2 version 2000.1 is a sports video game developed and published by Sega for arcades in 1997. It's the sequel to the 1994 video game Virtua Striker and the second game in the Virtua Striker series. The arcade game was a major success in Japan, where it was the second highest grossing arcade game of 98 and the overall highest grossing arcade game of 1999. The Dreamcast version, however, received mixed reviews from critics. Virtua Striker cabinets were everywhere in the UK in the late 90s. It must have been by far the most popular Sega model system arcade game over here. You'd see them in pubs, you'd see them in bowling alleys, you'd see them in laser quests, you'd see them all over the place. But is it actually a good football game? No, it's absolutely dreadful. Is it great anyway though? Yes. Yes, it is. Your players respond to commands with the speed and agility of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier piloted by Harry Maguire, but somehow it's still fun. It's terrible, really, but I just can't help liking it for some reason. It has such a summery World Cup vibe, and yeah, once you figure out how to score goals, it is a pretty satisfying and addictive arcade game. It's not really a football game, mind you, not in the way Sensible Soccer or Pro Evo is, at least. Think of this more like a foosball game, if you will. It's damn good fun in the pub after a few beers. Play this one in 2-player mode, you will have a good time. Referee! Sunrise Eotan, I've not pronounced that right, sorry, is an RPG for the Sega Dreamcast, an RPG that takes characters from the various anime franchises produced by Sunrise and throws them all into one game. The most notable series included in the game is the insanely popular Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. It's a mech battle sim with a dramatic orchestral score and plenty of zooming in and out of the action. It has a fine sci-fi plot. Apparently, I can't make head nor tail of it, of course, because it's in Japanese. This one gets 73 based on 3 reviews, so it must be pretty decent, I guess. It's nicely presented, I'll give it that. Pretty cool graphics, and it certainly seems to have nicely put together dialogue scenes. The Star Trek music comes in here for some reason, I'm not sure what's going on there. Narrowly avoiding copyright, I would say.
よーしみんな、新たな作戦指令を伝える。聞いてくれ。明日15時前後、敵補給部隊がこのポイントを通過する。今回我々シルバーホックスは前もって現場に潜入。ここと、ここと、それからここの3カ所に分隊して待ち伏せ。ターゲット通過時にこれを殲滅する。チーム編成、第一小隊、俺、クレオ、レイナ。
Vermilion Desert is a real-time strategy game with RPG elements. The player plans missions based on battlefield information in real time using a map. Each unit acts automatically according to skills, situations and directions. The player also controls a power suit unit and has to create a variety of team strategies with detailed settings such as the range of weapons and different formations. The Silver Fox Special Forces, I kind of picture a cloned army of Richard Gere's there for some reason, are fighting against an aggressor who's invading the Kingdom of Argan. Besides destroying the enemy, there are also operations like hostage rescue, infiltration, and retreat operations. I played this one a little bit and it seemed pretty cool. Indeed, you can muddle through it a bit because the commands are in English. The graphics are a bit muddy, but you know, it's a military sim, so that's to be expected really, I suppose. I like mission-based narrative games like this, generally speaking, but the language barrier takes quite a lot of the appeal away for me, of course. Sega Retro score of 73 if military sims are your bag, and you are a Dreamcast fan, then this is a good fit for you if you can somehow deal with that language barrier. It's a pretty good candidate for a translation, I would say.
Breaker.
「
All tensions normal.
Plasma Sword Nightmare of Bilstein. Bilstein, released in Japan as Star Gladiator 2 Nightmare of Bilstein, is a 1998 3D weapons-based fighting video game released by Capcom for the arcades. It's the sequel to Star Gladiator and runs on the ZN2 hardware, an improved version of the PlayStation-based ZN1 hardware its predecessor ran on. A Dreamcast port was released in 2000 in the West. In Japan it was 1999. The control system from the first Star Gladiator was reworked and rebuilt for the sequel. Much like the first game, players are given an arsenal of 4 usable buttons. 2 of the buttons are attacks for a fighter's weapon, while 1 button is used for a kick attack, and the final button is used for inward and outward sidesteps, as well as dashes. The Plasma Combo system was discarded in favour of the Plasma Strike system, in which all characters have a plasma gauge, similar to the ones in Street Fighter and Darkstalkers, and they can store up to 3 levels of the plasma gauge, enabling them to pull off super moves called Plasma Strikes. Blah 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 blah. Yes, this game is good. Very good, in fact, I would say. It's fun and it's absorbing. The 240p resolution does make it look a bit PS1-ish, but it has very good performance, and there are some snazzy effects like this quasi-reflection thing going on here. It's just a simple transparency effect, I think, but it's certainly very effective, and it looks very cool indeed. It's got really nifty art design, and there seems to be quite a lot of depth to the mechanics. I had a very good time playing this. I actually put it somewhere near the top of the list of Dreamcast fighters. It was far from cutting edge at that time, and that probably explains why it got a somewhat muted response, but you cannot argue with the gameplay here. And the world and the characters are fun too. The soundtrack's also great. Give this one a try if you have the means. It's still very, very good. 60 based on 36 reviews. Don't believe a word of that. It's very harsh indeed.
Flood carrier, get ready.
Cyber Troopers Virtual on Oratorio Tangram is a 1998 arcade action game from Sega, a 3D fighting game where the player assumes control of a giant humanoid robot. It was developed initially on the Sega Model 3 arcade hardware. Updated versions were ported to the Dreamcast home console in 1999. As with its predecessor, Virtual on Cyber Troopers Virtual on Oratorio Tangram uses 2 joysticks for its control. The game starts 20 years after the events of the first game. After the defeat of Zed Grat, the mightiest VR and the final boss of the first game, humans continue to battle in their VRs, searching for supremacy. However, an unknown AI known as Tangram has awakened and become self-conscious. self-conscious. He's a bit shy. I think they mean he's developed consciousness. With the directive to destroy humanity, Tangram infects Earth's mother computer with a virus called Tangram virus and hacks into all VR systems, except for the player's VR. It plans to use the infected VRs to destroy the last human colonies that survived the previous war. The player character begins the mission to defeat all VRs and destroy Tangram. I did not write that. This is a very impressive looking game indeed, but I haven't got a clue what's going on. Really, this is probably the only big Sega franchise that I've never gotten around to getting into, really, if that makes any sense, and that's because getting into this unique game is a bit of an investment. The cost of the twin sticks, which you really need in order to get into it properly by most accounts, has always put me off. Some say that you can play the Saturn version with the original controller to a decent standard, but that hasn't really been my experience, to be honest. Yeah, I've always wanted to get into this series, but not quite enough to cough up all that dough. They're still really expensive on eBay. There's always other retro stuff to buy somehow. Certainly, it looks fantastic. I dig the style, and I dig that it's such a unique thing. That's the magic of 90s Sega after all. You do really need the twin sticks to get into this one though, as the standard Dreamcast pad is inadequate, I would say. This gets a Sega Retro score of 81. Needless to say, this game has a hardcore following, and you can find oodles of information about it elsewhere. Coaster Works, known in Japan as Jet Coaster Dream, is a simulation game for the Dreamcast console published by Bimbu Soft. The game's a simulation of roller coaster design and construction. Each of the levels offers certain requirements that the player must meet to pass to the next level. The game starts the player off in a kiddie-themed park and progresses to more and more difficult levels with more difficult requirements. A direct sequel called Jet Coaster Dream 2 was released in Japan only. I'll have to play that one, I wasn't aware of that fact. A third game, titled Roller Coaster World, was developed by Takara and released in Japan as Simple 2000 Series Volume 33, The Jet Coaster. I'll have to try that one too, but it was only on PS2. So yeah, I had this game actually. I think I found it secondhand in a shop in Chester in the UK, back in the immediate post-Dreamcast days when they were selling these games off for pittance, you know. You remember those days, right? I wish I hadn't sold it actually, because it's a bit of a rarity these days, I think, and also because I just like the game. It's cute and it's fun and it's simple and it makes you giggle. You start off with a small area and a limited number of things you can do with your roller coaster, but by the time you get into last stage, which isn't very long at all really, you can go absolutely nuts with loop-de-loops and corkscrews and all that good stuff. It's ace. There's enough room to get creative with things, and it's fun giving your coaster a test run and finding that the G-forces are so intense that you've vaporized half of your punters. 64 from Sega Retro, but it's a solid 8 out of 10 from me. It's fun and it's cheap and it's charming. Give it a try.
Come on, make it! Oh no! Oh no!
Tee-Off is a video game developed and published by Bottom Up and Acclaim Entertainment in 1999. The game received average reviews according to Game Rankings. In Japan, Famitsu gave it a score of 28 out of 40.
I don't deserve this.
You're not going to get very far in life with an attitude like that, pal. My favourite golf-related thing is that clip in the original Jackass movie, but I did love Everybody's Golf on the PlayStation Vita. Man, that was fun. This is not as good as that, although admittedly it's like 12 years older or something. It's a bit drab-looking, unfortunately. It needs some more pop in the greens and some bright, bold Sega blue skies, in my opinion. It's still relatively fun to play, however. I find the intro quite amusing. It's kind of average, to be honest. Not bad, not bad. 70 based on 18 reviews.
An outcast warrior enters a land plagued by an evil fate. He is not like ordinary men, for he carries the Dragon Slayer, a mighty blade of retribution, whose fury knows no equal. His enemies will know true fear once he starts to swing.
Oh, who is she?
Whoever she is, there's something wrong with her.
Yeah, but look at her. She's pretty hot. We can take her with us too for some fun later.
Yeah, you're right, buddy. Hey, you! Over here!
What the?
Damn you! You're gonna die for that!
Darn it, punk.
Who does this guy think he is? Your big sword won't save you, tough guy! Come on! Let's get him, boy!
Sword of the Berserk, Guts Rage, released in Japan as Berserk Millennium Falcon Arc Chapter of the Flowers of Oblivion, wow, is a hack-and-slash video game for the Dreamcast. Well, it's not pure hack-and-slash, it has a very substantial story attached to it too. It is based on the popular Berserk manga by Kentaro Miura, and the game is set between volume 22 and 23 of the manga, right after Guts and Puck depart for Elfhelm with Casca, but before Farnese, Serpico and Isidro catch up with them. I haven't read it, so I don't know what I've just said to you, but there you go. The music's composed by Susumu Hirasawa, who also composed the anime series music, and very good it is too. Released around the same time as Shenmue, Sword of the Berserk is notable for its early use of QuickTime events, QTEs. It used these to determine the different non-linear paths the player would take, depending on whether they succeed or fail in pressing the displayed button quickly enough during a QTE, allowing different ways to complete the game. The combat is cumbersome, yes, but the presentation and the story and stuff is ace, and the combat's alright, you kind of push through it. Of course it's rudimentary and sluggish by today's standards. Well, even at the time I would say it was a bit rudimentary and sluggish really, but it's fairly fit for purpose. It's okay, it does the job. And the story stuff is very entertaining indeed. The voiceovers are dodgy in the best possible way, and they're quite nicely directed too. Although the animation's bad, but again it's bad in a charming way. This has bags of personality. The care and attention lavished upon it is plain to see.
I'm Balzac.
Balzac? Did he say Balzac? Oh, Balzac. Yeah, I found myself sinking into this one right away. The soundtrack is ace. The whole thing is just deeply imagined, albeit rough around the edges. In fact, I'm gonna sit down and play through this one once I've finished with this episode. 68 from Sega Retro. That is harsh.
Hey there, Space Cats! Ooh la la here, coming at you from Spaceport 9. Tonight I'm investigating reports that aliens have invaded and are forcing people to dance.
All lines are clear, ooh la la. Let's see what you're made of.
Let's go. I've encountered aliens on the main floor, and they've taken hostages.
Copy the aliens' moves. Press the buttons with the rhythm. Get on it.
Let's dance! Up, up, up. Up, up, up. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Right, left, right, left, right, left.
Use the A button beam when they say Q.
Okay. Right, up, kick. Right, up.
Space Channel 5 is a video game for the Dreamcast released in Japan on the 16th of December 1999. It was the first game to be developed by the newly opened United Game Artists studio within Sega, spearheaded by Tetsuya Mitsuguchi, although the UGA name had not yet been adopted by the original Japanese release. The game stars Space Channel 5 reporter Ulala, tasked with upping the ratings of the channel and stopping the evil Marolians who are forcing the galaxy to dance. Space Channel 5 is a rhythm game, of course, similar to Parappa the Rapper and the like. Throughout the game, the computer shows a sequence of moves, dance steps in this case, and the player must copy them successfully to advance. Repeated failure will force the show to be cancelled, effectively triggering a game over. It utilizes 6 different commands: up, down, left, right, A, shoot, and B, shoot. I love Mitsuguchi's games, generally speaking. Sega Rally is heaven, in my opinion, and I love Rez 2. Child of Eden on the 360 was pretty awesome. I have a copy of that in my basement somewhere, and that new Tetris was cracking as well. I'm shite at this game though, unfortunately, and consequently I find it all a little bit stressful. I want to like it because the style is great and it's just emblematic of the Dreamcast, isn't it really? But I've never fully gotten into it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's certainly a very high quality title, regardless. It has a Sega Retro score of 76.
Use the A button beam when they say Q.
Kick. Here we go. Shoot. Stay tuned.
Nice shooting.
Street Fighter 3 Double Impact is a fighting game compilation produced by Capcom, released exclusively for the Dreamcast in 1999 in Japan. It collects the first 2 versions of Street Fighter 3, the long-awaited numbered sequel to Street Fighter 2, originally released in arcades for Capcom's CPS-3 arcade board in '97. Because of the advanced capabilities of the CPS-3, neither game could be ported to consoles until the mighty Dreamcast was released over 2 years later. Years after the second World Warrior Tournament and the fall of Shadow Lu, a third World Warrior Tournament is being held by a mysterious secret society called the Illuminati. Character sprites are more detailed and have more fluid animation than in previous entries. Gameplay incorporates some features from previous Street Fighter games, as well as Capcom's Darkstalker series and Marvel-based fighting games such as X-Men Children of the Atom. New Generation introduced parrying, called blocking in the Japanese version, which can be used to deflect incoming attacks without receiving damage. Leap attacks, which are small jumping attacks used against crouching opponents, and super arts, which are powerful special moves similar to the super combos of previous games. Second Impact added new characters, new moves for existing characters, personal actions, whatever that means, and X specials while refining the existing mechanics. The graphics are great. These late period 2D games, that is before the 2D sprite thing became retro and cool again obviously, frequently look amazing. They were really pushing this stuff as far as they possibly could, trying to resist the tidal wave of 3D polygon-based graphics, which were dominating things in those days. The animation is stunning, and it really looks like a living cartoon. It's fantastic. It's kind of strange thinking about those days now, because everything had gone 3D, and Street Fighter had kind of gone off the boil, having been the biggest game in the universe just a few years earlier. It still had lots of fans, of course, but I remember seeing this featured in Edge magazine and being a bit like, oh, Street Fighter's still going, is it? It was no longer considered cutting edge, because 3D was where it was at, and it was maybe even considered a bit old hat in those days. The zeitgeist was well and truly with Tekken, Virtua Fighter, Dead or Alive, and all that stuff. Of course, it came back to mainstream prominence in a big way, and Street Fighter 3 itself is a brilliant game that still looks absolutely beautiful today, so there you go. Sorry, I'm rambling. I can't speak much about the subtleties of the different versions of Street Fighter 3 because all I know are dragon punches and whirlwind kicks and all that stuff. That's the limit of my knowledge, really. I was much more into 3D fighters at the time, but certainly it's very, very good, and it's very, very beautiful. 73 according to Sega Retro, surprisingly. I think that's rather harsh, but it does probably illustrate what I was just talking about, actually. Don't listen to them. It's an awesome game.
桜花の世界で初めて出会った仙人白孔明は問う。我を信じよと。そして彼女は来聖将として仙人の白孔明死後のもとで修行を積むこととなる。
Uka Blooming Time, that's the English translation, is a simulation RPG for the Sega Dreamcast. Japanese time again, folks. Details are very scarce on this one. It's an RPG type thing. I've not a clue. I've absolutely no clue. If you don't speak Japanese, then you are well and truly friffed. 56, based on 3 reviews.
B-Man!
Already.
The Killer Bee! The Brown Plane!
Who was that?
Not a fucking clue.
Nobunaga's Ambition, Repuden, is a simulation game for the Dreamcast, part of the long-running Nobunaga no Yabo series, the 8th title in that series, in fact. This was released for Windows 95, with ports for Macintosh, PlayStation, Dreamcast, and PlayStation Portable made later, and a remake released in 2006 for Nintendo DS. The original game was one of the first in its genre, being released in March 1983 by the Japanese video game developer Koei. Never been sure how to pronounce that one. Nobunaga's Ambition takes place during the Sengoku period of feudal Japan. The player is tasked with achieving the ultimate goal of warlord Oda Nobunaga, the conquest and unification of Japan. You don't necessarily have to play as him though, because you can also choose from a variety of other regional daimyos of the time. Again, this one is a major struggle for me, obviously, because it's in Japanese. I did enjoy Romance of the Three Kingdoms 8 on the PS2. That's a Chinese-themed one, but it's kinda part of the same series, although that was in English, of course, and this one is not. There's a nice painterly style to the graphics here, and I quite enjoy the audio, but more than that, I really cannot say. There are English versions out there for other platforms, so I'd have to suggest you play one of those. 75 from Sega Retro. Puyo Puyo Da featuring Elena System. What? Is a Puyo Puyo dancing game created in '99 for the arcade and the Dreamcast. The game was released only in Japan. It's an adaptation of one of developer Compile's Disc Station games, Broadway legend Elena. Al Nadja, same to you, and her friends take some time off from Puyo, fighting and challenge players to dance with them. The game features several dance stages similar to games such as Space Channel 5 and Parappa the Rapper. It also introduces a new Elena system used to render the game, whatever that means, as well as a new exclusive character featuring the same name, Eleanor Stevens, the protagonist of the original Broadway legend Eleanor featuring Park Jin-young. Just roll with it, guys. 1 or 2 players can dance to a variety of J-pop tunes by using the controller buttons to copy their opponent's moves. Based on how well a player copies the moves, nuisance Puyos are sent to their opponent. The player loses if their health bar drops to 0, or if they have nuisance Puyos on their side of the screen. This is pretty fun. Initially, as I couldn't read what was going on, I put it on hard mode by accident, and it was absolutely fucking impossible, but then I realised what I'd done, put it in normal mode, and had a decent time playing it. Yeah, I'm not really into rhythm games, but this is definitely fun. It also has a fish girl in a tutu.
She's a fish girl in a tutu, she's not strange, she just wants to live life away.
Resident Evil 2 is a 1998 survival horror game developed and published by Capcom for the PlayStation. The player controls rookie cop Leon S. Kennedy and college student Claire Redfield, who must escape Raccoon City after its citizens are transformed into zombies by a biological weapon 2 months after the events of the original Resident Evil. The gameplay focuses on exploration, puzzles and combat. The main difference from its predecessor are the branching paths, with each player character having unique storylines, partners and obstacles. You don't really need me to tell you that, do you? It's Resident Evil 2. I'm sure you know all about it. As the Japanese name suggests, the Dreamcast version is a slight update to the original PlayStation release. It's actually based on Biohazard 2 Dual Shock version, which added a few modes. The Dreamcast version also includes digital galleries and a playable demo of Code Veronica. However, at its core, it's the same game, hence why Western releases did not make the distinction. It was, of course, developed with the PlayStation in mind before being brought to Windows PCs twice, the Nintendo 64, the Dreamcast, and eventually the GameCube. The Dreamcast version of the game derives from the Windows PC port. The game is built around pre-rendered backgrounds, all of which were created for the 320 by 224 screen resolution of the PS1. Seemingly no higher resolution backgrounds were created, or at least saved, meaning all subsequent ports rely on these low resolution assets, which is a bit of a shame. 3D models, however, are rendered at a higher resolution in the PC, Dreamcast and GameCube ports, meaning there is a bit of a disconnect between the low resolution 2D backgrounds and the high resolution 3D models. This would not be an issue in the sequel Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Textures have a more reddish tone on the Dreamcast due to errors in the conversion process apparently. However, all FMV is played in full screen in a 4:3 aspect ratio, higher than any other port, including the GameCube, at 30 frames per second, so that's nice. Most of the extras found in the N64 version are missing from the Dreamcast port, as they are in other versions, and some audio cues are also missing. So yeah, this does look better than the PS1 version in most respects, of course. I think it does seem to be a bit on the lazy side though. The backdrops are obviously low resolution by Dreamcast standards, and there's no filtering applied to the characters either, which gives it quite a unique look in the Dreamcast pantheon really. Although it is quite nice and clean looking, certainly. It's Resident Evil 2, you either like it or you don't. It's never really piqued my interest particularly, but I'm sure it's a pretty great game. 81 from Sega Retro, it's a pretty good way to play this classic game, I would say.
Oh, you must be the new guy. Leon. Sorry, but it looks like your party has been cancelled.
Panzer Front is a World War II tank simulation game first released in '99 in Japan by Enterbrain for the PlayStation and Dreamcast game consoles. Players perform the role of a tank commander during the war, using one of 6 fictional tanks. Battles are fought on various maps based on actual historical campaigns. During the game, the player can engage the enemy while calling in artillery barrages whenever they are available. Panzer Front takes a realistic approach. Some enemies can kill the player's tank with one shot. Reinforcements are also available in some missions if Allied tanks are lost. It has 25 missions based on real events. Examples include the destruction of a British armoured column in the Battle of Villers-Bocage, don't know how to pronounce that, the US Army's defence against a ferocious German counterattack in Les Déserts, the defence of the Reichstag during the Battle of Berlin, and several based on the Battle of Kursk. Now, after a year of development, Dare Player and Phil Yers have completed an English translation patch for the Japanese exclusive game, which is awesome. So how's the game? It's alright. Certainly worth a pop if you're into this kind of stuff, and it's certainly unique amongst Dreamcast games. The controls were rather confusing for me at first. You have to hold both triggers down to go forwards, otherwise you just rotate to the right and left. That took me a few minutes, and I don't think the graphics are that great. I would say the PS1 was the target platform for this one, but that being said, it's solid. If you know this is going to be your cup of tea, then you should absolutely go for it. 78 from Sega Retro. Eternal Fantasy III Perpetual Blue is an adventure RPG game, the third in the Yukyu Gensokyoku series for the PS1 console. It was obviously released on Dreamcast too. There is barely any information about this one in the West. This paragraph is obviously auto-translated from Japanese. Just dig this. The game most of the time is choose between different actions or answers to advance in one direction or another. That adventure part is made in a first-person perspective. The other part of game is made in a third-person perspective, since the player's character can walk around buildings and other places, and the same for the battle part that is made in a third-person perspective instead of the medieval theme that was in the other games in the series. This third installment is in the modern world and features some members of a bureau that fights against magic monsters. This game has lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of talking. It's a visual novel thing. It has some turn-based battles too. I haven't a fucking clue. Was that a haiku? 63 out of 100 from Sega Retro. Evolution 2 Far Off Promise is a role-playing game for the Dreamcast. It is a sequel to Evolution 1, The World of Sacred Device. It was developed by Sting, not the Sting, and published by Ubisoft in North America. In Japan it was published by ESP, while in Taiwan a Microsoft Windows version was published by Dyson Interactive. It was also released for the European market in 2001 as one of the last European Dreamcast games. Like the first Evolution game, Evolution 2 is a dungeon crawler. Unlike the first game, Evolution 2 has both random and predetermined dungeon maps. Mag Launcher and company ventured towards the continent's centre via the newly built railroad. With a new set of ruins to explore, Mag has the opportunity to become the greatest adventurer in the world, but a new presence threatens to destroy his relationship with Linear. I find this series rather drab-looking and low-rent compared to Grandia 2, say, or Skies of Arcadia, to be honest with you, but I know it has its fans, and I can't fully comment on the quality because I've never played beyond 5 or 10 hours, to be honest. It gets 70 based on 17 reviews. D2 is a survival horror video game developed by Warp for the Dreamcast. Directed and written by Kenji Ino, it was published by Warp in Japan in 1999 and by Sega in North America in 2000. It stars digital actress, inverted commas, Laura, but it has an independent story unrelated to the original D and uses action-oriented gameplay in contrast to the puzzle-driven D. The majority of D2 involves exploring the Canadian wilderness from a third-person perspective, while interior locations are encountered in a first-person perspective. While exploring the wilderness, the player encounters random battles much like those of a role-playing video game. When fighting monsters, the players cannot move Laura, but only aim her weapons. Defeating these creatures earns Laura experience points, which are used to level up. You're initially equipped with a submachine gun, an unlimited ammo, and a hunting rifle, which is used to hunt animals for meat, which she can use to regain health. Laura also has a camera that she can use to take pictures at any time in the game, except during cinematics. Players can also save these pictures onto a VMU and view them later on. The game opens with Laura Parton falling asleep on an airplane trip to an undisclosed location. After being jolted awake by a tone over the airplane's PA system and a friendly conversation with a fellow passenger named David, a group of terrorists who seem to be guided by some kind of mysterious cultist chanting to himself suddenly and violently take control of the plane. David, who turns out to be a special agent with the FBI, attempts to stop the terrorists, but he is thwarted when a meteorite strikes the plane, sending it crashing into the Canadian wilderness. She wakes up in a log cabin with a woman dressed in the most Y2K outfit I've ever seen. It's absolutely magnificent. She then sets out into the wilderness in order to investigate the possibility of contacting the outside world and seeking out any other survivors, only to discover that more strange, hideous creatures are lurking in the area, as something is causing the crash survivors to mutate into the very same monsters she must avoid and Dragon battle while travelling through the region. This game started development as a premiere game for the cancelled Panasonic M2 console, the successor to the 3DO. That mysterious lost M2 version is very different to the game that we eventually got on Dreamcast. I remember seeing pictures of that lost mysterious game in the pages of Edge magazine back in the mid-late 90s, and it's probably one of gaming's great lost titles. Anyway, this one, yeah, it has some pretty impressive graphics for the time. I love the unique and esoteric Kenji Eno vibes. I still think the original D was probably the most successful translation of his mad and awesome ideas, but this one absolutely should be played by the Dreamcast aficionado. It's a truly unique and very compelling experience. There wasn't anything else quite like this at the time, and there still isn't. Give it a try. Sengoku Turb Fan I Love Me Dunce Double Entendre, that is actually the name. It's a follow-up to Sengoku Turb, also released exclusively in Japan in 1999. It appears to be nothing more than a minigame collection hidden underneath the veil of an RPG. Sega of Japan's catalogue page refers to the game as Sengoku Turb Fan I Love Me Dance Double Entendre, correcting the misspelt dance but missing a letter from entendre. Interesting facts here, folks. It also abbreviates the name to Sengoku Turb FID. Yes, I would stick with the original game if you're into this kind of thing, as that is a proper action RPG, albeit a very strange and unique one. This is very, very odd indeed, although some of the minigames are kind of fun. 85 based on 2 reviews? I'm confused. Yamazaki Kingdom Great Hunting Battle is a Sega Dreamcast table game, a toilet-obsessed title which looks like Gomon meeting a Mexican wrestler, as participants in the board game use a slot machine wheel to determine their progress rather than a dice. Plenty of references to dropping the kids off at school in Shu, and an intriguing insight into Japanese humour. Those were the words of Genki Video Games, not mine, because there is very little information about this title in the West. Do you think this game's Japanese? I think it might be. Hang on a minute, I think I've heard this song somewhere before. Very strange and confusing. 38 based on 3 reviews. Godzilla Generations Maximum Impact is a video game developed by General Entertainment for the Dreamcast, released on December 23rd, 1999. It's a sequel to Godzilla Generations. The game is very different, however, in virtually every way, with completely new graphics and added cinematic cutscenes. It's a rail shooter. Instead of directly destroying buildings and enemies, the player moves a cursor while aiming at what the player wishes to destroy. Bit of an awkward sentence. Stages are divided into two types, city stages and monster stages. During the city stages, Godzilla walks through a city while the GDF attacks with military vehicles. During boss stages, Godzilla faces off against a powerful opponent such as King Ghidorah, such as all those Godzilla monster things. It is possible to destroy body parts on bosses and remove their ability to perform certain attacks. Beating the game will unlock the Viewer mode, which lets a player view and interact with models of the game's monsters. This one is not highly regarded, and neither was the first one, but I actually quite enjoyed both of them. To be honest, I generally like rail shooters, and this one is simple with a cool soundtrack, and it looks okay too, so yeah, it's an interesting curio. Well worth a try. 59, based on 5 reviews. Meanies.
ご機嫌いかがでしょうか。本日はオープン戦カープ対ドラゴンズ完全中継でお送りします。まもなく試合か。なりました。打った。
Let's play with a professional baseball team. Pro Yaku Team da Asabo is an entry in Sega's Let's Make series for the Dreamcast. It simulates the ups and downs of life at a baseball club. You'll need the eyes of a Fukuoka hawk, the ferocity of the Chunichi dragon, the backbone of a Hanshin tiger, and to be as coy as a Hiroshima carp to succeed. Who writes these things? Not me. That one was very sharp indeed, wasn't it? Genki Video Games strikes again. Yeah, this is good. I have a cultural handicap when it comes to baseball because I'm English, but I know what I like, and I like this. The graphics are bold and super colourful. It runs at a tip-top frame rate, and it's simple enough even for me to have a go at. 78 based on 3 reviews.
台場はもともと江戸幕府が黒船来航に怯えて作った島の
第7台場まであったんですよね、昔は。
そう、砲台を備えるための人工島でね。
Tokyo Bus Guide is a driving simulation game released for the Dreamcast. Your job is to drive buses around Tokyo, in case you hadn't guessed it. Taking its cue from the huge popularity of franchises such as Densha de Go, Let's Go by Train, TBG gives the player a chance to take the role of a Tokyo bus driver. The task is this: guide a public bus along specified routes and stick to a timetable like it's a matter of life and death. Only in Japan, folks. Should see the fucking bus drivers in England. Absolute dunces. Simplicity itself? No, not really. Getting behind the wheel of a bus is not like getting into the average turbocharged super racer and blazing around a track as quickly as possible. You can't arrive late, but you daren't be too early either. Always remember to ring the bell ahead of time to alert the passengers that a stop is coming, close the doors before leaving, and pull away slowly. As any safety-conscious Tokyo bus driver knows, this job is all about signalling before moving, considering the other traffic, constantly checking mirrors, and manoeuvring the bus around bustling Tokyo, all in a smooth, considered, and considerate way. The bus control itself itself takes some getting used to, not because it's poorly implemented, quite the opposite in fact. The average Dreamcast owner may never have driven a bus, that's a fair assertion, but will get the feeling that the physics have been carefully considered. For those that feel overawed, a series of short tutorials taking the driver through the gamut of moves and must-dos will help develop the players into Tokyo's finest. Unfortunately, that's all in Japanese. A standard DC controller is more than up to the job apparently, and utilises both the analog pad and analog triggers. Steering feels well balanced, complete with the realistically huge turning circle. This game is hard. You lose points for like everything really, and I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know what they're being docked for most of the time. Well, some of them are obvious really, like this for instance. So yeah, I would really welcome a translation for this one if anyone fancies doing it. But yeah, it's certainly a relaxing game. It's very chilled indeed, a nice atmosphere all round. 66 from Sega Retro, it's certainly unique, and I dig it.
Stay back, Ryo. For the last time, where is the mirror? I've no intention of telling you.
Father! Why?
Now then. No matter how often you ask, I'll never tell. No, don't! Hand over the mirror. Or else, your son. Wait!
Shenmue, or Shenmue, is an adventure game produced and directed by Yu Suzuki and developed by Sega AM2. In Japan, it came out just before Christmas in 1999. 25 years ago, I can't believe it. It stands as one of the most significant video games ever published by Sega. At the time, it was the most expensive game ever produced, and having unparalleled interactivity and freedom, real-time day-night and weather systems, fully voiced non-playable characters, and cutting-edge graphics. Borrowing from many genres of video games, Suzuki coined a new genre named Free, or Fully Reactive Eyes Entertainment, to describe it. As the Japanese name suggests, Shenmue consists of the first chapter in what is currently an unfinished story. Shenmue begins on November 29th, 1986, from the perspective of the protagonist, Dio Hazuki, returning home to his family dojo to witness his father, Iwao Hazuki, battling with a man named Lan Di, dressed in Chinese attire, who demands he hand over an item known as the Dragon Mirror. Dio intervenes in battle after his father is felled but is injured by a blow from Lan Di. As his father refuses to reveal the location of the mirror, Lan Di lifts Dio from the ground and threatens to kill him with a final blow, which prompts Iwao to reveal its location underneath the cherry blossom tree. Dio makes inquiries into the incident with the local people of his hometown, Sakuragaoka, and swears revenge on Lan Di. It was envisioned as the next evolution of RPGs, although its design incorporates a number of genres attempting to simulate life in the mid-1980s while also including adventure elements, puzzle-solving, fighting segments, and even the occasional race. The game is very much story-driven and uses very simple mechanics designed so that anyone could play, as opposed to the likes of Virtua Fighter, which Yu Suzuki claimed were too daunting for younger players. Traditionally, Shenmue is said to consist of 3 core gameplay modes. Free Quest, where Dio can freely move around, talk to passers-by and interact with objects in an effort to obtain information. QTEs, or quick time events, dramatic event scenes in which the players have to press the left, down, right, up, A, B, X and Y buttons in a short amount of time. Or the Free Battle, where Dio fights opponents in a 3D arena, not dissimilar to AM2's older Virtua Fighter games. He learns new moves throughout the adventure, and practicing them makes them more effective in battle. There are also a number of mini-games and side activities such as darts and full versions of Sega arcade games, Space Harrier and Hang On. That was absolutely fucking Matrix-like at the time. I couldn't believe that there were games within games within games. Gameplay in Shenmue is governed by an in-game clock, with certain events only occurring at certain times of day, or indeed times of the year in some cases. Players are not, however, usually restricted by date and time, and while their journey was originally set to influence the story in later chapters, this feature was never fully implemented. It's not possible to fast forward the clock in this original game, save for when Dio is asleep. If an event requires the player to wait, they must do so in real time. That pissed a lot of people off, but it didn't piss me off. Its magic weather system sees the game implement a full day-to-night cycle and weather changes, reportedly based on observed real-world weather patterns of the mid to late 80s. Characters will also react to the weather, with some taking out umbrellas when it begins to rain. The game was remarkable for its time for allowing the player to talk to every NPC they came across, which are in turn fully voiced, very badly, in the English version, as opposed to standing still and dispensing the same lines of dialogue as is common to most RPGs. Non-playable characters in Shenmue live their lives in accordance to Japan's then 5.5-day working week. Wow. Leaving their houses to start work, taking lunch breaks and going home at the end of the day. The development team also made sure each NPC has its own name, age and hobbies, including some of the animals. It's also possible for Dio to buy capsule toys. There are 168 different toys in the game featuring characters and objects from Bonanza Brothers, Daytona USA, Fantasy Zone, Golden Axe, Hang On, Nights into Dreams, Panzer Dragoon, Fantasy Star, Rent-A-Hero, Ristar, Sonic Adventure, Sonic the Fighter, Space Harrier, Virtua Fighter and Virtua Fighter Kids. Alex Kidd also makes an appearance, as does Hidekazu Yukawa, alongside a number of smaller versions of Shenmue objects. Is this too much detail? Items collected, money earned, and the in-game date is picked up and carried forward to the great sequel Shenmue 2, if that game detects a Shenmue save file. It received wide critical acclaim due to the many revolutionary features it brought to the world of video games. Despite this praise, Shenmue struggled to sell. Some critics thought the game was far too slow and self-indulgent. Though easy to sell to Japanese audiences, Western consumers found the game's themes unappealing. I fucking certainly did not find them unappealing at all. I thought it was wonderful. During its first week of sale, 260,000 copies were sold in Japan. In Europe, it sold more than 300,000 copies. In total, 1.2 million copies of the game were eventually sold worldwide. It gets 90, based on 38 reviews. Shenmue, I mean, what can I say on a personal level about this game? I've gushed about it in 2 great big videos, available at all reputable retail outlets. Well, my YouTube channel, that is. So, what can I say beyond that? Well, it's a wonderful and, in many ways, strange and esoteric game with the budget of James Cameron's Titanic, and somehow it actually got made, which might be the most amazing thing about it. Thank God it did, in my opinion, even though it probably played a role in fucking up the company. But hey, at least we have this. I love this game. It is very close to my heart. The graphics and presentation were genuinely awe-inspiring at the time. No one had seen anything like this. The cinematic presentation, the musical score, and the real-time 3D graphics. Me and my mate Rob were 16, 17 at the time when it came out. We used to skive off college, that's UK college that is, and play this game at my mum's house in stunned silence, eating bread and butter and smoking hash, marvelling at this amazing, living, breathing world. It still amazes me to this day, in fact. Look at the texture of this game world. A stronger sense of place no game has created to this day, in my opinion. The combat is pretty excellent too, as is the story. But do I have anything new to say? Well, perhaps I can talk about my favourite part of this original game. Well, it is in fact the events of Disc 2. After I'd picked my jaw up off the floor and soaked up the incredible detailed texture and sailors of Disc 1, Disc 2 sees Dio doing a bit of light sleuthing, ultimately making some tantalizing discoveries relating to his deceased father. There's an intimate, sweet, and melancholy atmosphere to many of the cutscenes on this disc that still make an impact to this day. Oh.
That's a delightful sound, don't you agree? It was made especially for that butterfly woman. You know Madame Butterfly, don't you? You're Hazuki Sensei's... Oh my, that was a terrible thing. Your father. Ah, I was holding something at Sensei's request. Just where did I put it? Huh? Oh, yes, it was very important, so I put it here.
Dio returns home and roots about in his house for clues relating to the missing mirror. He uses a sword he finds in the dojo, along with the sword handguard left to him by his dad, and discovers this secret passageway. The atmosphere as he descends to the basement floor here is just electric.
I wonder where this leads. I need light to go in.
Check out those lighting effects. For a game released in 1999, it's just unreal. This sequence demonstrates the real value in Dio's ability to interact with previously unheard of numbers of objects and items in the game world. Look at the way he's rifling through all these different drawers. You can pick up almost every object you can see. The gameplay here also demonstrates that despite the commonly held belief that Shenmue is the original open-world game, it actually has more in common with visual novels like Hideo Kojima's Snatcher, to name but one, a game in which you rifle through the various elements of whatever scene you find yourself in, trying to find a key item or trigger the next sequence, and also, of course, soaking up the copious amounts of game world detail. In Snatcher specifically, your interaction is menu-based for the most part, and the detail is often just in written form, whereas Shenmue is presented in very detailed real-time 3D, but the principle is very similar. Like Snatcher, the story is also very linear, with a bit of freedom to move about from location to location if you wish. Both games are also punctuated by action scenes, although Shenmue's combat is far more, good than Snatcher's light gun shooting sections. In all fairness, I wouldn't be storing all that old paper down in the basement. The damp must be terrible. Maybe he's got an ancient Chinese dehumidifier or something. There are many mysterious items in this room, more than there need to be, really. Dio doesn't even know what most of them are. In a lesser game, there might only be the key items and nothing else. Shenmue, on the other hand, gives you access to tons of texture and detail. It creates the impression of an authentic, organic game world, and it also, of course, stirs your imagination to a greater degree. What does this thing here do? Where did it come from anyway? This is all good storytelling in my book. Many of these items are of Chinese origin, and Dio finds an old photo of his father with an unknown man. These clues hint at a mysterious past that Ryo's father has concealed from him. Of course, the dramatic opening of the game and the later harbour sections with the 100-man battle and the forklift truck and all that business tend to stick in most people's memories, of course. But I'd say it's this second disc where the game really starts to absorb players. Well, it did for me anyway. It's at this stage of the game that a deeper, older, more profound, even somewhat mystical undertone emerges from this fairly quotidian scenario. It's just magical stuff.
This box. Got it. It's the Phoenix Mirror. Two mirrors.
A long time ago, Zhu Yuanda once told me, when the dragon and the phoenix meet, the gates of heaven and earth will open, and Qi Yu will resurrect itself on earth.
Qi Yu?
It's a legendary Chinese monster that will devour this world of ours. It appears Lan Di will try to make use of both mirrors.
What will he try?
That even I don't know, but you mustn't allow him to get that mirror. Be careful and stay alert.
If he finds that mirror, it will be the end of you.
Shenmue is also one of gaming's premier Christmassy games, of course, so it's a very good one to revisit at this time of year.
Excuse me? Merry Christmas! Ho, ho, ho! Oh, hello there. Every Yokosuka-style jacket is half price at Jupiter's Jackets. Christmas is the time for giving. Ho, ho, ho! Buy your presents at Dobuita's Christmas sale. Some other time.
With the news that In Games has picked up the license to Shenmue 3 and have posted some tantalizing info on their website recently, let's hope we get another installment of this wonderful game in the nearish future. Beautiful, quixotic masterpiece or boring, mad, bloated, pretentious folly? You be the judge. I know which side of the fence I'm on. This game will always be very close to my heart. So there you have it, folks, a pretty bumper crop in this episode, don't you think? What were your favourite games in this episode? I know which one mine was. Where do you stand on Shenmue? Please let me know in the comments below, and please remember,
every Yokosuka-style jacket is half price at Jupiter's Jackets.
Oh shit.